So now we'll take headlines across Africa, and then from there we'll look at what is shaking up the world of social media.
Headlines across Africa.
Headlines across Africa.
Headlines across Africa.
Headlines across Africa.
Well, like I mentioned, we're going to Ethiopia, we're going to Morocco, and then we'll be going, interestingly, to the Democratic Republic of Congo. But let's start from Ethiopia, where we're reading from the Capital newspaper. And the headline says the government sparks to switch to an open electric tariff. Government sparks to switch to an open electric tariff. Now, when I see anything power and it's like we're moving to something that is going to help us, I get excited, but then also I get inquisitive because I really, really hope that what we're jumping to is going to be better than what we're using. Well, the government of Ethiopia is tracing to come up with a new version approach on the power sector development with an open electric tariff against the current feed-in tariff, which is TFIT, feed-in tariff, FIT indirectly. Now, the power sector reform needs more than 6.5 billion US dollars in the coming about 5 years to electrify major parts of the country from the current 1/3 of power assets on grid. The power sector reform has revised the previous roadmap on the energy sector development, which is critical to assure other economic and social developments that the government tabled to meet by the year 2030. And to attain the goal for the National Electrification Program, the government has estimated 6.5 billion US dollars that will be filled from different sources. Now, one of that is the Public-Private Partnership Scheme, PPP scheme. And that's something the government has implemented in the past couple of years, which seem to have worked. But one of the gaps to expand in the private sector involvement on the power generation is the tariff is not that much attractive. And we had the State Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy, Frehiwot Wodehana, and he said that there are activities under PPP on geothermal and solar. Meanwhile, there are few private companies that are investing on the sector, but it needs to be boosted to reaffirm the ample power production, he has added. So, I mean, we know geothermal is good and we know solar is like the best because it's renewable. So that is going to save a lot. But when it comes to the money you need to be able to fully set it up and have it running, that is where we tend to have an issue in some countries. He further explained that at the current stage, the independent power producers, which are the IPPs, are getting under power purchase agreement on FIT that could not continue in the future. At the meeting with Natural Resource, Irrigation and Energy Standing Committee that was held a week ago, the state minister said that under the reform, the power purchasing scheme is considering introducing a market-oriented rate for private generators. Now, the reform is included and legal framework and other issues are underdeveloped, which will be disclosed in future, he told the lawmakers. Well, that is a story coming from the Capital Ethiopian newspaper in Ethiopia. And we're moving on to Morocco. Like I keep saying, when it comes to power, it will be amazing to find a time where almost the whole of Africa is connected to renewable energy sources because we have sunlight. Like, we really do have sunlight. Well, moving on to Morocco, we're reading from the Le Matin newspaper, and the headline says, political parties in favor of the principle of a list dedicated to Moroccans around the world. Political parties, both majority and opposition, are increasingly open to representation of Moroccans from around the world in parliament in the upcoming elections. Indeed, they have expressed their agreement to this principle in the context of meetings that have taken place over the last few days, which was between the 5th and 12th of January 2021, and with members of a coordination that lobbies in this direction. Now, this is the coordination of Moroccan political parties abroad, which brings together the leaders of the Moroccans in the world in 8 political formations of the majority and the opposition. And you're talking about PJD, RNI, USFP, MPUC, Istiklal, PAM, and PPS. We also have the members of the coordination preparing a memorandum defending this cause, which they discussed during these meetings with the secretaries general of the 8 political parties. Now, the document, which is currently finalized, will be presented to the head of government and the Minister of the Interior by the end of the month. Clearly, therefore, the consultations between the coordination and the political parties seem to be very, very positive. So we hope that they can actually come to a conclusion. But this is a great thing to have Moroccans outside the home country, around the world, being part of parliament so we can actually make good decisions and bring about development. That's a laudable thing coming from Morocco. That's the story from the Le Matin newspaper in Morocco. And finally, we're moving on to DR Congo, where we'll be reading from the Actualite newspaper. And the headline says, Martin Fayulu on school closures. Are we afraid because we can't support free education? That's the question he's putting out there. Martin Fayulu is in front of the press this Thursday, and it addresses several issues related to the current situation in the country. Now, he was particularly focused on the management of the coronavirus pandemic and the closure of schools since December 18th, 2020. And the question he's asking is the fear because we cannot support free education? Let us know exactly what's going on. Let's talk about the pandemic. How is the management being done? Are households being supported? Are businesses being helped? How is that going on? Compare with other African countries. Was the vaccine ordered? These are among the many questions he's put out there for the government. Well, on Wednesday, we had the EPST minister, Willie Bakonga, and he said the resumption of classes was imminent. Now, the minister said the resumption will be staggered. It has to be said because we're not going to have all the students return at the same time. Here in Kinshasa, especially in other provinces where the curve is also rising, we will stagger this resumption of prices. Well, that's the story coming from the Actualite newspaper. If you ask me, when it comes to students going back, and it has to do with COVID-19 case, I believe due diligence should be put in place before you send the children back. Ensure that you've put all the safety precautions in place so they don't go contract it and bring it to their families, to their homes, because that would only increase and bring about the spread in a high rate, which is what we're trying to prevent. Well, that was what we had for headlines across Africa.